Hello family, it's African Esquire and I'm here with a new video. Before I get started, please subscribe to my channel on Black Junction TV if you've not done so already. Black Junction TV, unlike YouTube, is actually a black owned media platform. However, like YouTube, you can upload videos and have a following, and you don't have to worry about the issues of YouTube pertaining to censorship and pertaining to getting your content taken down for speaking truth about those issues that are going on inside of the world. So please subscribe to that channel. And also I want to announce that this Saturday, which is August 25th, I am set to do a Google Hangouts conversation, really, and the name of the conversation is supposed to be Revolution Live. So Revolution Live, Gil Scott-Heron said that the revolution will not be televised, but the revolution will be live. And we see his prophecy really happening all over the internet, because while the media entities have essentially shut out all type of content that could possibly lead to liberation for African people, the internet has allowed us to have that platform and allowed us to talk and have conversations pertaining to our liberation. And that's really what this is really centered around. It's the idea that different Pan-Africanists, we need to be conversing with one another, and we need to be sharing our ideas about issues that are going on in the world. So the conversation will be had with Nation State of Mind and Son of Malcolm, both of whom are activists and very heavily active on social media as well. And we're going to be basically just having a conversation, and we're going to hopefully get some truth out of that and be able to influence a wider conversation for us who are out there dealing with the same issues that we're going to be talking about. So just keep an eye out for that. I will announce more in the coming days. So I don't have necessarily a direct topic to talk about today, but I did want to express some sentiment about what is happening on the continent of Africa. Many of us remember, or if you have not, read Marcus Garvey's writings, you will know what I'm talking about. But many of us might remember that Marcus Garvey said Africa for Africans. And we see that the state of Africa is absolutely the opposite of what Marcus Garvey was calling for. Instead of Africa for Africans, it's basically Africa for everyone but Africans. You have every single country that has any power in the world going to Africa, trying to get the minerals that are rightfully ours, rightfully the African people's minerals, taking those minerals and basically leaving Africa, leaving the people poorer than they were before, leaving the countries more corrupt, and doing all of this in the name of their self-interest. So Africa is for the self-interest of others, but not for the self-interest of Africans. So today I was watching a video talking about the Ghana gold rush. And if you don't know, there's really a gold rush going on in Ghana. However, the people who are benefiting from this gold rush is not African, not Ghanaians. Instead, it is the Chinese who are going to Africa in order to extract those minerals. So it's interesting because if you go to African countries, what you'll see is there are a lot of people who are unemployed, a lot of people who are not able to take care of themselves, take care of their families, and they're looking for opportunities. Oftentimes, these same people will run away to Europe, run away to the United States in order to have a chance to take care of themselves, take care of their families, thinking that they have no other option. Meanwhile, you have people from outside of Africa, and particularly China, running to Africa in order to build up their communities, in order to send money to their families, because they see the opportunities in Africa. So what is going on that we don't see the opportunities, but they see the opportunities? Why is it that we see the opportunities getting jobs from someone else instead of building something that is truly black, truly African, truly for the people who are going to be living there long after those foreigners who come in and raid your communities have left? And this is really just a paradigm shift, or understanding and seeing things for what they are. Another article I was reading today was talking about the issue in Ghana of there was a contract made between the Ghanaian government and China that basically had China construct a $2 billion construction project. And the people who are doing it is a Chinese company, Chinese workers. Who's benefiting from this? Yes, Africans, they will have the construction project complete, but who is actually benefiting economically from this project that has been contracted to China? This has been a common theme on this channel. You might remember I recently did a video about how China has been working with things inside of the government inside of Zimbabwe, and actually had a part in the election being, I believe, being corrupted, and the election process having been not been the choice of the people, but instead been the choice of Chinese interests. I also talked about the Kenyan government, which has contracted for the United States to come and build a highway inside of Kenya, but of course they're taking loans from China to do it. The common theme is, why is it that we are so in a rush to get these things, these highways, these buildings, this thing that is going to make us look like we're competing with the world, but we're doing so at the cost of our own people? When I say in a rush, I'm saying because we have to understand that these same infrastructures that we're trying to get, first of all, it should be built by people who live in these countries. But not only should it be built by people who actually live in the countries inside of Africa, it should be built with the understanding that this is not something that's going to happen quickly, because Africa has been completely underdeveloped by the European colonialism. So if we understand that, first of all, Africa should not be trying to join the ranks of the United States at this exact moment as far as looking flashier or looking more industrialized. They should not be trying to join the ranks of Europe or join the ranks of China, but actually instead taking a moment and just closing off the outside look and understanding that inside something more fundamental is going on, and that is that things are not being done with the correct amount of time and patience in order to actually build up a stable economy, a stable people. And then once you have a stable economy, the stability of the community, once you have that, then you start looking to develop. And this, of course, is not popular to say this, is to say, hey, slow down, stop trying to build so quickly. It's not a popular thing to say, but if you look at the history of these same countries that are doing these big buildings and big skyways right now, these are countries that have developed stability over time before they even started soaring in their economic exploits. So if you look at China, for example, China built their economy very quickly. However, they had a long period of peace, a long period of stability. Then they were able to actually go out and build up their economy to be competing right now with the United States. This happened not too long. It didn't take too long for China. It took less than 100 years for them to actually become what is now the #1 economic superpower in the world. So why are we in such an angst to build up these buildings, build up these construction projects, and have these people come into our countries and build these things that we should be building? The issue is that we're so set on a mind of thinking that things have to be done now, instead of thinking about long-term interests and thinking about the interest of African people, that we have been completely bombarded by people who are thinking that doing one thing is the best way to do things, instead of thinking about actually building something that's going to be sustainable, not just for us, but for our children. So the issue to me is why the reason why we have these other countries coming in and building things in Africa is because Africa, unlike these other countries, has not taken the time to actually train and have skilled people in their countries that are going to actually be able to build it for themselves. There's a reason why when the United States wants to build a highway, or if, let's say, Pennsylvania wants to build a highway, they don't go to China, they don't go to Zimbabwe, they don't go to anyone else in order to build these highways or build these construction projects. And the reason is because over a prolonged time there has been allowed to be development, natural development of skills, natural development of education, natural qualifications and experts who can actually come into these areas and say that this is how you do this is how you build this, without having to go outside of the country. And I'm not saying that the United States doesn't take things or take ideas from people outside of the country, outside of the United States. Of course it does. Everyone does. But the issue is, at some point you have to say, okay, we're going to cut the cord here, and we're actually going to say, okay, we're not going to reach back and ask anyone else. We're going to do this for ourselves. And the question is, does the African people throughout the diaspora, do we believe that we can do things for ourselves? Do we believe that we can actually have an Africa for Africans, have an Africa where we don't have to beg anyone in order to have ownership of our own economies, that we don't have to beg anyone for jobs, that we don't have to beg anyone for access to our own gold and minerals? Do we believe that this is possible? And a part of the colonial mindset was to teach us that it is impossible. And because we have been trained to think this, our leaders don't think that it's possible, and they go out and try to do things quickly instead of having faith and belief that the African people can be a self-sustaining people, that the African people cannot depend on anyone. So to me, what Africa for Africans means, it means there should be a day when African people can look inside of the African continent for everything that they need. They don't have to look for money from anyone. They don't have to look for aid. They don't have to look for workers to build up this or that. There should be a point where African people say, hey, if anything, maybe I'll go outside of Ghana and I'll go to Zambia. Maybe I'll go outside of Zambia and I'll go to South Africa. Maybe I'll do that. But I am certainly not going to go outside of the continent to give people who have no interest in my well-being, no interest in my liberation, give them these jobs. And again, the ironic thing is, when you go to these countries, there's so many people who need a job, and they will run to other countries in order to get that job. And meanwhile, in their own country, people are running to Africa. There was one part of the video I was watching where this Chinese man was saying how in China, he could not make that much money. He can only make $300 or $400 a month. But in Ghana, he came to Ghana looking for opportunity, and now he's making hundreds of thousands a year. Hundreds of thousands. And meanwhile, people who actually are from that community and own that community and that rightfully own that community, they're making way less than he probably could have made in China. So think about this. Think about the fact that we're so set in our mind that we can't get opportunity from ourselves. We can't build for ourselves, and we can't be free by ourselves. Instead, we can only be free with someone else's money, someone else's check. That is a colonial mindset that we've adopted, and we still believe. But if you can believe the radical idea that African people can be independent and self-sustaining, can develop our own countries, develop our own economies, and not depend on other people in order to have the same economic freedom and economic liberty that those same people have. If you can believe that idea, then that's really the first step, is believing in an idea of Africa for Africans. And once you take that step, then you can actually take the time. And again, time is not something that happens overnight, but it certainly happens with patience, and it certainly happens with people who are resilient and who have absolute faith in the African people to take ownership of what is theirs. That is how it happens. It doesn't happen with people who are like, oh, okay, well, we see that y'all can do this, but hey, we can go to China and they can do this for this and they can do that for us. No, it takes people who have faith and commitment to African people, to their own, to Ghanaian people, to Zambian people, to their own people, without having to go outside of the continent. And even if you don't want to go outside of the country, develop that labor in your own country. So that is what it would take, having belief and trust that you don't have to go to someone else in order to have a functioning, fully rich Africa. And I'll say one more thing. I truly believe that when this happens, that Africa, no one will be able to mess with Africa. When Africans and African leaders can say, hey, we're not going to start looking for these people to do this. Instead, let's just focus on ourselves. Okay, we don't know how to build this. Let's just say, okay, fine. For right now, it won't be built, but we're going to actually train our people. We're going to send them to this school, send them to this person. We're going to learn, and we're actually going to invest inside of the children, invest in the youth, and invest in adults in order to ensure that they are able to learn these skills and actually build up Africa. Well, it might take time, but we know that we can do it because we have faith in African people. When this happens, trust and believe that Africa will be the #1 world power. Because once we have Africa for Africans, that completely offsets the power dynamics and the ability of Africans to actually negotiate among these world powers about how much they're going to sell their minerals to, and or what they're going to do for other people. That completely offsets the power dynamics. So understand that this is a not just as some off-the-wall concept. This is an absolute necessity in order for us to move forward. Believing and trusting in our own people, believing that if we actually stop building so quickly and say, instead of building something so it can look nice, instead of we can say, hey, because I hate when people say this, oh, yeah, well, you know, Africa looks just like this place. Look, we have these big buildings. See, we have this, we have that. Oh, we have a mall. Instead of building these things so quickly, if you can just stop and say, wait. We have children who are on the street begging. Instead of being in school, we have adults who are able-bodied who can build these same things. Let's just hold off on all this for a second and actually focus on the people that we have and on our own people, and I'm building them up so that they can be in the same position as the Chinese builders to develop Africa and make Africa what it really should be, and that is the number one continent, the number one power. That an African Union should be the number one world power on this globe. So that's all I have for you all. I would love to see your thoughts on the idea of Africa for Africans and what it would actually take to get us there. So I would love to see your thoughts, and I will see you all in another video.